of any of the black races of Africa, including, besides the Negroes proper, Bantus, that Bantu word, Pygmies, Hottentot, and Bushmen. Maybe that's the reason why they have the clicks too. See language table. Secondary is a black man, a person having more or less Negro blood, more or less. Look at Negroid. Negroid, characteristic of or like the Negro or Negroes. A member of a race perceptibly sharing Negro blood. That means, looking black. Or displaying Negro traits, especially a Bantu.
All right. It's actually pronounced Bantu, but shout out again to that brother who read that original definition of Negro. I actually included that in my groundbreaking presentation of the E1B1A comprehensive video, and you'd be hard pressed to find that definition, because in that definition clearly it actually identified who the Negroes were. And had they never taken that original definition out, we would have known that the Negroes were Bantus or the E1B1As, and all of us were offshoots of that. So shout out to that brother on that, because that was very important as far as identifying who the Negroes were. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be in the world when you start to view my most recent video tutorial entitled Bantus are Negroes, the Zondervan indirectly named. Brought to you by the Hebrew Israelite Online Learning Institute, instructor and narrated by yours truly, Dr. Yehoshua ben Ephraim. Okay, before I get into today's presentation, as usual, the trend I started is to always give a thesis. Now, as try as I might not to do them, it's a little something that's been ingrained in me since having to type countless research papers in grad school. Now, theses are great because it gives your audience an outline on what they can expect in the body of work being presented. Now, if your thesis is dull and uninteresting, then normally that is a pretty good indication that your paper or presentation probably isn't going to be much better. So you always want to, make sure your thesis statement is solid, interesting, and connects the dots, if you will. Okay, so that's that. All right, historically, quote-unquote black people have been called and labeled any and everything in the book as a way of trying to denote what their race, ethnicity, or nationality actually is or should be, but unsuccessfully, I might add. Blacks have been called or labeled colored, black, Negro, Afro-American, African-American, Black American. The list goes on. But the one glaring fact about all of those titles they have historically tried to place on our people is that none of them actually denote what nation our ancestors actually came from. And I've covered this before in other platforms. But Africa is a continent, okay? It's a continent that houses several dark nations, okay? The races of people that inhabit those nations are known by their nations. Ethiopia is in Africa, but they're called Ethiopians, right? Egypt is in Africa, but they're known as Egyptians. And the list goes on and on. Each race of people are known by their nation because it gives them your nationality. Okay? But we didn't get that. None of those titles remotely gave a clue as to which nation in Africa our people came from. Now, was this deliberate and by design to keep the slaves totally ignorant, wiping their minds clean of their previous history, thereby having to rely solely on the slave master's information with respect to who they were and where they actually came from? See, the first official slave ship touched down on Virginia soil in August of 1619. All right. The very first Hebrew Israelite movement was started by a West Indian by the name of Wentworth Arthur Matthew in 1918. The name of the organization was called the Commandment Keepers, out of New York City. He was the first unofficial black rabbi, quote unquote, America had ever seen. But it took almost 300 years of our people being captive in a land neither us nor our forefather had known before the Most High stirred one of us up. Now think about that for a minute. Almost 300 years, we didn't have a clue. Now that really gives the 400-year prophecy set to expire in 2019 a completely different light and perspective. Those 300 years is significant because within that time frame, our people, for the most part, we were thoroughly and completely brainwashed, successfully reprogrammed, and sold out completely to the Christian religion and doctrine forced upon us, and then eventually we gravitated to it and adopted it willingly. Now, of all the terms used to try and describe our race, nationality, or ethnicity, unbeknownst to us, then and even now to an extent, the term that actually came the closest to identifying who we were, or more accurately, who we weren't, was Negro. We had been taught and told that we were from the bloodline of Ham, and that our enslavement was the result of the curse of Ham. And side note, actually, it was Canaan who was cursed by Noah, not Ham. And that curse of Ham stuff came from the Babylonians, actually out of the Babylonian Talmud, a satanic book. But more on that at another time. Now, of course, the aforementioned were both lies. But our ancestors were so entrenched and sold out to what the slave masters taught them, they didn't bother to read. Because if they did, of course, once they were finally allowed to do so, that is, let me say that. Because if they did, Genesis 10 and 6 states clearly who the bloodline of Ham is. And our race of people was nowhere to be found among that genealogy. All right. So fast forward. And at some point, now I couldn't find the original print date, but the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary was printed and essentially expounded on Genesis 10 and 6, but with one glaring inclusion. It clearly pointed out that Ham did become the progenitor of the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Africans, but not the Negroes. Wait, what? Right. That was a game changer, because that passage clearly made the distinction between the Negroes and those other dark races whom Ham became the progenitor of. And let me just say on a side note, where the Africans were actually the Canaanites, because like I said before, Hamitic Africans actually possessed Israel at some point before they were dispossessed by Joshua. So they were called Canaanites. But I just put Africans in there because a lot of people won't know. They would think Canaanites mean some separate type of people or whatever. So I put Africans in there just to kind of make sure there's no confusion as to who those people the Zondervan was talking about. We're talking about the Hamitic Africans, okay? The E1B1A ones, just like the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, etc. Okay? Now, the only thing that passage did not do was identify who the Negroes were. Or since they felt this need to, all of a sudden be so honest and forthcoming, go on to further state, where the Negroes actually came from, and that they came from Shem, which would make them Shemitic, not Hamitic. Now, although the powers that be have lied and tried to keep the Negroes as Hamitic and sub-Saharan, neither stands up to genetic scrutiny, though. And I proved that. But see, this was crucial. And for whatever reason, Zondervan broke with conventional wisdom and told the truth after 300 years of perpetuating the lie of who Negroes were and which bloodline they came from. You all want to know what's crazy, though? That one inscription in the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary under the description of Ham and not the Negroes must have really ruffled some feathers on a higher level, because lo and behold, in the latest published version of the Zondervan, it's my understanding that instead of saying not the Negroes, it now says not the blacks, which is kind of idiotic because all the dark races of Ham are black, but clearly they're attempting some type of damage control here because they've already let the cat out the bag, proverbially. But hey, you can't unring a bell, right? As the intro stated, with the reading of the original meaning of Negro that has since been changed or taken out, depending on how you look at it. And like I said, it's virtually impossible to find that original text that the brother was reading, clearly identifying the Negroes as the Bantus. Now, on a side note, the passage also listed the Hottentots, Pygmies, and so-called Bushmen as Negroes too. Now, if anyone can find an original copy of the old definition of Negro, please let me know, because I've searched high and low, but to no avail. In this presentation, I will cover the Bantu expansion, which is essentially the launching pad for our peoples, disseminating throughout Western and Southern Africa, as well as do a comparison of the Negroes and Hamitic Africans. Go over some of the differences. I'll revisit the DNA and current situation of the African Limba, because since my first comprehensive E1B1A presentation, more information has been made clear to me about exactly what's going on with this so-called, Cohen modal haplotype. Ironically, the Bantu and Limba are connected as well, because the Limba are clearly identified as Negroes too, and they share the E1B1A haplotype. However, there is supposedly a percentage of Limba who carry haplogroup J, and allegedly that's where this so-called Cohen modal is found, which is completely and unequivocally false. But it gives credence to these, these Ashkenazi and Khazarian Jews as being Levite priests. So they're pushing that. But again, my next video will clearly, blow that out of the water. All right. But the general consensus, ever since the Zondervan proclamation, is that Negroes are the true Jews. Okay? This presentation will deal with this from a genetic, geographical, and historic perspective, as well as biblical. Finally, I'll bring forth a language presentation that compares and shows the Hebrew language and Bantu languages as almost identical. Real quick, I want you all to Google the term Negroes and click images. And I want you to see what comes up, what images come up. And what you will see is 90% of the images that come up under the search term Negroes is going to have something to do with slavery. That's wow, that's kind of mind-boggling on for many reasons. I'm just going to leave that there and say this real quick as well. The only race of people that went back into slavery, just like the Hebrew Israelites were supposed to, were Negroes. And with that said, let's start the presentation. And here is the not the Negroes inscription, that was published by the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, and essentially just was a catalyst and helping us to kind of sort this whole thing out. I mean, because I'm not even gonna lie, I'm gonna keep it totally real with you all. I really would like to speak to whoever was responsible for researching this and putting this together, and what prompted them to say this, what prompted them to put that in there. Now, real quick, because I'm going to deal with it so extensively and comprehensively on the next video, the whole haplogroup E, Negroes included, we all come up out of Eber by way of Peleg. Okay, when Eber had Peleg and Joktan, actually haplogroups D and E was together. That would be Peleg and Joktan. We came up out of Peleg. Okay, Joktan would be the so-called Chinese Japanese. They were called Ainu. And I'll get into all that in the next video. But I would like to know, whoever was responsible for researching this, where did they get their information from? How did they come to that? How did they get to know that? And what made them tell the truth? Now, like I said, the only thing they didn't do was identify who the Negroes were. So they told half the truth, right? Okay, that's cool. Now, let's frame that. We didn't even know, even with the definition of the Negroes being Bantus, we still didn't really know how to identify who were the children of Israel that were cursed to go back into slavery by way of slave ships, per Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, right? So, boom, here I come with the whole E1B1A thing, because I identified those so-called slaves that was on those ships, right? Majority of them, and they were, from the, kingdoms of so-called Yoruba and Igbos and things like that, Ghana, Cameroon, but the majority of those slaves, and they had Hebrew names even. I brought that forth as well. They had Hebrew names on those slave ships. Majority of those slaves, their Y-DNA haplotype was E1B1A, and everything kind of just went from there. I put together a 3-hour comprehensive video, leaving no doubt, and it just kind of flowed. Now, the thing that gets me about our people is, I really don't think, the non-black enemies of our people have too much to worry about, because our people do more tearing down of us than anything. They do a really, really great job. You have some fool trying to discredit Zondervan. Black people will attack anything just because it doesn't fit their agenda or fit what they want to believe. First of all, the foundation is the Torah or the Bible. Okay, you got some lost Negroes out there talking about Ham and Shem didn't exist. Well, guess what, Mr. Smart Person? Even if Ham and Shem didn't exist, guess what? Our DNA suggests that we came from two different men. I don't care if you call them Tom and Jerry or freaking Heckle and Jekyll, whatever names suit you. The bottom line is, genetically, we came from two different men. And see, that's why I don't even bother with these clowns, man, because they lack common sense. I can't deal, right? So however you want to slice it, Negroes are E1B1A. We came from the whole Bantu expansion. We are the true Jews. We are the lost Hebrew Israelites. Thank you, Zondervan, for putting that in there, even though you're trying to change it now. But thank you. You already put it out there, right? So it doesn't matter how you want to slice it, okay? You don't have to believe in Ham and Shem. You have a Y DNA. You got no choice but to believe in your DNA and what it suggests. In the DNA of the Egyptians, the DNA of the Africans, and the DNA of the Negroes. Well, actually, they share DNA, and our DNA is different from every nation on this earth. That is a genetic fact. So deal with that. I'm not even gonna, go into it any more than that, because it speaks for itself. Okay, this is the verse that kind of started it all, started the ball rolling. Then the Most High raised me up, and here we go. The Negroes that the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary we're talking about were the Bantus, the E1B1As, and we all came from that. So it really doesn't matter who said it. The truth is the truth, and that's that. And it never ceases to amaze me when, you start telling the truth, or, telling people things that they don't want to hear, and they start saying the most outlandish, outrageous, just dumb stuff. Someone actually said that they don't believe that verse in the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, and I'm like, dude, that came out of the Bible. I mean, it's just, I'm telling you, the things that, man, that spirit, man, that demonic spirit is in the earth, man. They bucking against the truth, because now, the Most High's people are raising up, But yeah, Zondervan didn't pull that out they behind. Here you go. They just basically reprinted Genesis. Only thing they did was they kind of went a little in depth in terms of telling you who the races were. Okay, and the sons of Ham or Cush, those would be the Ethiopians. Mitzrayim, that would be your Egyptians. Put, that would be the Libyans come up out of there. And Canaan, those are your Africans, the Medic Africans. There you go. But like I said, the only thing they did do was throw in the not the Negroes. Now I'm pretty sure the powers that be was expecting them to do all of that, because now they're trying to scramble and change it and put not the blacks in there, but it's too late now, right? So there it is there, coming straight from Torah. All right, and I wanted to address this real quick, before I go on. And I'm not going to get too deep, because I think I'm going to kind of really address it comprehensively again in the next video, but I have to speak on this propaganda about King Ramses III being E1B1A. Okay, well, that is a blatant lie. And even if it isn't, guess what? One of two things. First of all, let me preface by saying this. Again, you have to go back to scripture. All right? The children of Israel, we were in Egypt in bondage for 430 years. Okay? That's a pretty long time. So pretty much goes without saying that a lot of us lived and died in the land of Egypt. Okay? We're very connected with Egypt. There's no denying that. Okay? So for someone to say that they grabbed some mummy or some body and claimed it to be King Ramses III, and he was E1B1A, well, there's a problem. Because if King Ramses was an Egyptian, as it says here in Genesis 10 and 6, he came from Mitzrayim. The children of Mitzrayim, their Y-DNA haplotype is E1B1B1. That is a genetic fact. So one of two things. If that was King Ramses and his haplotype was E1B1A, his Egyptian mama was getting it on with a Hebrew and conceived him but raised him as an Egyptian. Or two, he was a genetic Hebrew Israelite, but lived and died as an Egyptian, as Moses would have done. Remember when the Pharaoh's daughter found him and he raised Moses as his grandson? Well, if Moses had not been called to lead us out of Egypt, he would have died an Egyptian too. Okay? Now, so that's that. Deal with that. Now, and lastly, genetically speaking, somebody's lying, because if King Ramses III was E1B1A, and I doubt that very seriously, his DNA outed him as a Hebrew Israelite. And there is no denying that genetically. Remember I told y'all way back to my very first video, DNA is the truth revealer. Even if you've been lied to your whole life, your DNA is going to reveal the truth, man. The only thing with the whole not the Negroes thing is that I had to genetically prove that inscription about the not the Negroes and uncovering the E1B1A. So the Zondervan did their part, and by grace and mercy of the Most High, I did my part by identifying the Y-DNA haplotype of the Negroes. So there you go. So let's deal with this next segment genetically for those so-called Egyptologists and fake pro-black Africanists or whatever running around, trying to spread the propaganda that King Ramses III was an Egyptian and his Y-DNA haplotype is E1B1A. You guys are pathetic. But scripture says, speak ye the truth and be set free. Let's go. And here we go. Boom. You lost Negroes, brothers and sisters. Y'all need to be ashamed of yourselves, man, running around spreading that propaganda and those lies to our people. Okay, there you go right there. E1B1A, Egyptians, 2.7%. And then it breaks down into whatever section you want to go. I mean, Northern Egyptians, 0%. Southern Egyptians, 0%. Like man, you guys need to knock it off, man. Like this is almost fun to me at this point. It's funny. Not in an arrogant way, but it's like this stuff is so, I don't know, man, it's so remedial, but you cats running around trying to scare our people, put in the spirit of doubt. Y'all need to go head on with that, man. Seriously. This ain't even funny, man. I mean, y'all think it's a joke. Y'all think it's a game. Y'all running around talking all this Egypt stuff. Listen, man, knock it off. There you go, people. Right there in their face. If King Ramses III was E1B1A, or like they're implying that, the Egyptians were E1B1A, whatever the case may be, you wouldn't see numbers like this, man, in Egypt. All right, I mean, let's just knock it off, man. Like, seriously, enough with it. And I'm gonna just say this real quick before we go into the next, segment with the whole Bantu expansion and really get into the meat of that. We're not gonna get and understand everything. Everything is not going to make logical or, chronological sense to us. The Most High is not going to allow that. Okay, just stop it. That's one of the biggest gripes I hear about, archaeologists and anthropologists who actually have a spirit of the Most High, who say that a lot of their, they've been able to prove, different stories of the Bible and everything like that. But because the timeline and the time frame doesn't line up, a lot of those other scholars, they don't accept it because the timeline doesn't line up, or because this doesn't make sense, or that doesn't, it's not going to everything is not going to make sense. Okay, that's just how it's set up. Either you believe or you don't, man. I don't know why Ham's descendants, the Ethiopians, Egyptians, Libyans, and Africans, are E1B1B1. I don't know why they're that, and the children of Jacob are E1B1A. I don't know why. Okay, I don't know why the seeds of Esau defaulted to E1B1B1 in Rebekah's womb when Jacob, of course, is E1B1A. All I do know is that they did, because I have the genetic facts to prove it. I have the pictures of what they look like. I'm going to deal with that extensively in my next presentation, God willing. I don't know why. Everything is not going to make logical sense to you. If you try to make everything all mathematical and try to, make things, line up with a certain time, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get that. You're just not. So just stop it. It's not going to happen. The Most High is not going to let us pinpoint, when Adam was first on this earth, or how old the earth is. You can carbon date whatever you want to carbon date. It's not going to ever line up. I believe with everything in me that is by design. Okay? That's by design. We worry about things we don't need to be worried about. To be truthfully honest with you, I really don't care about all that stuff. I don't care about how old the earth is. I really don't care, when Adam walked and, all this and that. I really don't care, because I just found out there's a brother in South Carolina, and I posted this, I don't know, maybe about a month ago. The brother did a DNA test, and come to find out this brother's DNA is over 300,000 years old. You talk about confounding. It's like, whoa. Yeah, I'm going to have to find that article. But yeah, I'm just going to say that. I mean, there you go. Speaks for itself. Knock off the whole King Ramses, E1B. Knock it off, man. Okay, E1B1A is Hebrew Israelites, the Negroes, the Bantus. Okay, and the reason why we have all these different tribal names and this and that, because we're disconnected from our heritage. That's why we have all these different names and titles: African American, Igbos, Yorubas, all this stuff. Man, listen, those are all secondary nations to us, because we were discontinued and disconnected from our true heritage of that of Israelites. Point blank, plain and simple. So everything is not going to line up or make sense as far, even with the haplotypes. Yes, the Bible gives us a full haplotype, and I've been blessed with that knowledge to break that down, which is what I'm doing partly and what I've been doing. The Bible breaks it down for us. But even I don't have everything perfect. I'm not going to. What I've been able to give you all is by grace and mercy of the Most High. The things I'm most concerned with was I was able to identify who the Negroes are by our haplotypes, by grace and mercy of the Most High. Anything outside of that, I really don't care. I don't care about haplogroup A and B, and I'm just being honest. I'm not concerned with that. And more importantly than the haplotype thing, I'm more concerned with, once we identify that, okay, now we got that. Now we know for sure how to know who's Israel and who's not, who's the seed of Jacob, because to be the seed of Jacob, you have to possess his bloodline. Stop playing with me. Okay, but at the end of the day, it's about our salvation. That's why I'm doing all of this. That's what it's about. That's what all this DNA stuff is about. No, you don't have to be an E1B1A to be an Israelite. You can sojourn and take on the laws, statutes, and commandments of the children of Israel. And the Most High said in his word, Exodus 12, 48 and 49, that he will see you as one born of the land. We will all be under one law. He said that first person. So no, you don't have to be a genetic Hebrew Israelite to sojourn with us. But stop trying to graft in all these different nations that's not our people. That's not E1B1A. That's not of the seed of Jacob. They're sojourners. That's the most they can be. But y'all need to teach them that. Stop teaching that they're Israel, especially if they haven't proved or reckoned their genealogy as per 1 Chronicle 9 and 1. All of Israel have to reckon their genealogy as a child of Israel. And that's from the Most High. Okay? So that's that. On to the next segment. All right. Back on track. To many of you who, may not be or, have never heard, the term Bantu or, Bantu speaking people and the like, I thought it was important to go ahead and just kind of establish. And when I say that, I don't use that in terms of, being exclusive from them, because basically, we're all quote unquote Bantus. Okay. And the reason why we all get that distinction is because the Bantus got the distinction of being Negroes. Per the Zion Van Compact Bible Dictionary. So, from that perspective, essentially, we're all Bantus because we're all Negroes and all E1B1A. So, yeah, I thought it was important to, let's go into the history a little bit, about the Bantus, who they are and kind of what they're about and when this Bantu expansion took place. And we'll find out, you guys will see as I go on, they get real muffled and iffy with the timeline in terms of the expansion allegedly took place between 3,500 and 4,000 years ago, in Western and Southern Africa. But see, here's the small problem we have with that, though. They get real murky, basically, because my thing is, okay, where were they before the 3,500 years, 4,000 years, right? And you really can't find that. It gets real murky about, we're not really sure, this and that, and, this, that, and the third. And it's because, and the reason why I say that is because, let's say 4,000 years. That's the general number I hear a lot in terms of this Bantu expansion, right? Here's the one thing, though. The Bantu's Y DNA haplotype precedes those DNA tribes by more than 20, 30,000 years. And that's a small problem. What do I mean by that? To the layman, basically, if they're saying that the Bantus expanded 4,000 years ago, okay, they had to have started somewhere else because their DNA is much, much older than the people that they met there. In Western and Southern Africa and things like that. And it gets real murky. But anyway, let's get into it. And these are our people, the Bantus, the Negroes. Black South Africans were at times officially called Bantu by the apartheid regime. The term Bantu is derived from the word for people, common to many of the Bantu languages. Oxford Dictionary of South African English describes its use in a racial context as abolescent and offensive because of its strong association with white minority rule and the apartheid system. Interesting. I actually never knew that. However, Bantu, quote unquote, is used without pejorative connotations in other parts of Africa. Okay, I could see that. We're pretty much just like kind of like with the term nigger. We take something and adopt it and make it our own thing. Where it's supposed to be negative. I mean, I don't say that word, but I'm just using the comparison. I guess they kind of took Bantu was supposed to be an offensive word, and our brothers and sisters took it and just made it their own and made it not a bad word. Okay, I could see that. Let's go on to the next segment dealing with the history. All right, and moving right along to the history. It said at some stage after Tertiary dispersal
period, a settlement at Great Zimbabwe was established as the capital of a trading empire. Around this time, there's evidence of coastal trading with Arabs, with the Southeast Asian region, and even with China. As the southern groups of Bantu speakers migrated southwards, two main groups emerged: the Nguni, Xhosa, Zulu, Ndebele, and Swazi, who occupied the eastern coastal plains, and the Soho Tsana, who lived on the interior plateau. The two language groups have diverged and differ on certain key aspects, especially in the sound systems. Now, y'all please forgive me on the pronunciation. Some of these words, to my Bantu brothers, I'm doing the best I can. I'm actually reading this on the fly, so hopefully I'm not butchering it too bad, or and you guys can understand what I'm coming from. Now, you guys can always pause this, and read it yourself. Let's go down here. It says, from the late 18th and early 19th centuries, there were two major areas of frictional contact between the white settlers and the Bantu speakers in southern Africa. Firstly, as the Bears moved north inland from the Cape, they encountered the Xhosa, or the Xhosa, the Basato, and the Tsana. Secondly, attempts at large coastal settlements were made by the British, they go to British, in Xhosa territory, now the Eastern Cape. Man, the British was in everything, wasn't they? Man, they was something else. Wow. Sorry about that little sidebar. And in Zululand, now KwaZulu-Natal. At the time, KwaZulu-Natal was populated by dozens of small Zulu-speaking clans. In 1816, Shaka acceded to the Zulu throne. At that stage, the Zulu were merely one of the many clans. Within a relatively short period of time, he had conquered his neighboring clans and had forged the Zulu into the most important ally of the large Manethwa clan, which was in competition with the Ndandwe clan for domination of the northern part of modern-day KwaZulu-Natal. By many accounts, Shaka used ruthless military force against his opponents, often adopting a scorched earth policy to destroy or displace civilian populations. Wow. You've heard all the, seen some of the stories and heard all the great things about how great Shaka Zulu was. What a lot of people didn't know and still don't know today is that the Zulus are Hebrew Israelites. And I made a post on them about 2 months ago. Some writer went over there and they were doing some type of Zulu chant or something like that, and they just all of a sudden just started shouting hallelujah, hallelujah. And he said he was just bugged out. He was like, wow, like where'd they get that from? And me, I was like, that's their spirit crying out. But yeah, there's a healthy dose of Hebrew Israelites, Negroes over there. If you look at the Zulus, I have some pictures of them. If you look at them, they look like Negroes. They look nothing like, they look, Hamites. As a matter of fact, they look like some of the homies over there playing Africans, So, but yeah, they're definitely Hebrew Israelites, and a couple of those other Southern Africa clans that they named also have a heavy dose of E1B1A Hebrew Israelites within those clans as well. You all have to remember though too, the reason why we're so mixed in, because again, all these different so-called African clans that we're a part of, even with Bantu, these are our secondary nations because we were mixed into these nations. Okay, even going out to the like Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic, Haiti, Jamaica, all these different provinces and islands and countries, and because we disconnected and discontinued from our heritage. So, all of these different names, tribal and different country-based names and stuff like that, they're all secondary, my people, because they're not our true. It's not our true nations. All of them are secondary. What makes the so-called African Americans, a little different is because we have three nations. America, where we were enslaved at, the nation we came to slavery from, Africa, and Israel. And if any of you notice in the Bible, in the Torah, or just in the Bible period, you notice that it refers to the people that inhabit certain lands. Like if the Hamitic Africans that possessed Canaan at the time, they were called Canaanites, right? And you were referred to by the land you possessed, or the nation, right? And there was a reason for that, because it was an identity, a nationality, right? And so that being said, not trying to be funny or mean or anything like that, but there's a clear distinction in the features, in Hamites and Negroes, or seeds of Jacob, and it has nothing to do with how dark the skin is or nothing like that, or how some people say, oh, all black people look alike. That's a bunch of mess. No, we don't. There are some very dark skinned brothers and sisters, but they look like Negroes. And I said this for a long time. I don't know if it's a gift or whatever the case may be, but I can pick out a Hamite among a bunch of Negroes. I just can. There's something very distinct about their look. You could tell that we're from two different nations. We look nothing alike. Same thing with the Ethiopians and Somalians. They're both Hamites as well, and they have very distinct looks. Now, going back to what I said earlier, yes, we all came from Eber, the whole haplogroup E, but haplogroup E split, and society would have you believe that when it split, E1B1B became the so-called Jews, and E1B1A is the Africans. No, that's false. That is completely false, and I'm showing and proving that. I'm going to continue to show and prove that. E1B1A is the Shemitic line. Okay, E1B1B is the Hamitic line. All right, and as you can see here from this picture, here's this Bantu sister. She's a Negro. The sister before that, she was a Hamitic sister. And as you can see, I don't know if I can teach you all to just know the difference, but there's a clear, distinct physical difference between a Hamite and a Shemite or a Negro, right? And again, I'm not trying to be funny or pit us against them type situation. No, I'm just trying to teach that there is a difference, because they've always tried to lump on us, all black people from Africa, all y'all the same. Look, see these sisters here, these are Negro sisters, these are Bantus. These are Negro, these look like the homegirls. I mean, come on, you can look at them, look at their features. They look nothing like Hamites, right? Just look at them, and so I'm just in the spirit of teaching and knowing that there is a difference in the seeds. There is a difference in the nation. Here's a Hamite, right? There is a difference in our features. I remember, I'm going to share the story with you all. I had a friend of mine, and she said before she met me, she gave it it stumped her for a long time, but she said she had a African friend, and it worked with her. And, she knew nothing about, being a Hebrew Israelite, anything like that. And she said that they were joking one day, and she told him jokingly, "Oh, nigga, please." And she said when she told him that, the African, that, he got real serious and indignant. He says, no, I am not a Negro. He says, you are a Negro. I am an African. I am not a Negro. You are the Negro. You were the slave. And she said she was looking at him like she didn't know what to say. She was stumped, and then she just, because she didn't know what to say or how to respond, she just said, "Oh boy, whatever," and waved it off. But she told me, and she admitted to me, that when he said that to her, she was like, almost couldn't sleep behind him telling her that, because she didn't understand what he was talking about when he told her that she was the Negro and she was the slave. She was like, what? But I shared that story with you all to say this. A lot of Hamitic Africans, they know the story of who we are and the fact that we're from two separate nations. Okay, it's a fallacy that Africans sold other Africans into slavery. That is false. So-called Africans sold Hebrew Israelites into slavery, but because we were all dark or black, whatever you want to call it, they just lumped us all together, saying all Africans sold other Africans. No, look at these brothers. I think these brothers are Igbos. They're Negroes. Look at them. Look at their features. Right? Look at their features. It's clear. The distinction is clear, between a Negro and a Hamite, or Shemite and a Hamite. Right? Look at this brother here. His features are pronounced, man. This brother is a Hamite. I mean, like I said, I can pick a Hamite out. This brother's a Ham. Look at his features. And kind of resembles like the Kimbe Matumbo, right? And because they got that kind of Hamitic look or whatever. No disrespect to the brother, but I'm just trying to point out that the features are different. So yeah, I wanted to share that with you all. Give you a you know how I do. I like to give a a nice visual, with my presentations, and I think these they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, I agree. Because clearly we come in all different shades of black. So don't think it's about a skin color. We come in all different shades. Negroes do, but there's something we have clear, distinct facial characteristics and patterns from the other nations from haplogroup E, and in that there's no doubt you can't mistake a Negro for an Ethiopian, right? You can't mistake a Negro or a Bantu for a Somalian. See, here's a Somalian brother right here. Clearly, he's got dark skin, whatever the case may be. But look at his features. You cannot mistake him for a Negro. You just can't. And again, it has nothing. He's fairly dark skinned, right? But it has nothing to do with his complexion, right? You can't mistake him for a Negro, but he's still quote unquote black, right? So I hope y'all kind of getting me here. Beautiful Bantu Negro sister right here. You're not going to mistake her for a Somalian. You're not going to mistake her for an Ethiopian. You're just not. You look at her, at least I can, and I see beautiful, Bantu Negro woman. Straight up. All right. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of change it up a little bit, give you some nice visuals. Here you go. Nice looking Hamite sister. But clearly she's a Hamite. She's a medic. Right, beautiful, smile, complexion, everything smooth, but she's a Hamite. She's not. I'm not going to mistake her for a Negro. See, this dark skinned sister here, she's dark skinned, but clearly she is a Negro. So again, it has nothing to do with complexion, everything to do with features and characteristics. And Hamites and Negroes are from two different nations, two different bloodlines, and we look nothing alike. On to the next segment. Okay, getting right back to the history of the Bantu. We're going to round this out and get into the next segment, which will be the DNA segment. And like I said, I'm going to go over the whole Limba thing again and deal with the Bantu, Negro, haplotype, E1B1A, and all that good stuff. So y'all bear with me. We getting there. I don't like to rush. I like to be very thorough. So however long the video is, that's just how long it is. We'll get done when we get done, right? But I don't want to ever shortcut you guys. All right, so here we go. It says, after the death of Menathawa King Dingaswayo around 1818 at the hands of Zwadi, the king of the Nwande, Shaka assumed leadership of the entire Menathawa alliance. The alliance under his leadership survived Zwazade's first assault at the Battle of Gogoki Hill. Within 2 years, he had defeated Zawadi at the Battle of Menehizus River and broken up the Nwande alliance, some of whom in turn began a murderous campaign against other Nguni communities, setting in motion what has come to be known as Manafakan, a mass migration of communities fleeing the Zulu. By 1825, he had conquered a huge empire covering a vast area from the sea in the east of Drakensberg Mountains in the west and from the Pangolo River in the north to the Bashi River in the south, not far from the modern-day town of East London. Shaka is well known for the many military, social, cultural, and political reforms he used to create his highly organized and centralized Zulu state. And finally, it says Shaka integrated defeated clans into the Zulu on a basis of full equality, true Hebrew Israelite, with promotions in the army and civil service being a matter of merit rather than circumstance of birth. And there you go. I'm going to include like the very last segment of this history and round this out and speak a little bit about the alleged 3,500, 4,000 year migration. And then we'll end out this section and go on to the next segment. You just want to make sure, get some loose ends tied up before we move on. Okay, just like I mentioned before, information gets real, cloudy and iffy, and they start hemming and hawing and tap dancing. When you start asking questions, start researching, okay, if this Bantu expansion, started about, anywhere between, 3,500 and 4,000 years ago, whatever the case may be, where were these people before that? Because clearly they existed somewhere else. They had to have, right? Let's read this. Let's check out some of the language that they use when you start asking some of those type questions. Okay, it says it is unclear exactly when the spread of Bantu speakers began from their core area, as hypothesized, 5,000 years ago, and in parentheses 3,000 BC. By 3,500 years ago, 1,500 BC, in the West, Bantu-speaking communities had reached the great Central African rainforest, and by the 2,500 years ago, pioneering groups had emerged into the savannas to the south in what are now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Angola, and Zambia. Another stream of migration moving east by 3,000 years ago was creating a major new population center near the Great Lakes of East Africa, where a rich environment supported a dense population. Movements by small groups to the southeast from the Great Lakes region were more rapid, with initial settlements widely dispersed near the coast and near rivers due to comparatively harsh farming conditions in areas farther from water. Pioneering groups had reached modern KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa by AD 300 along the coast, and the modern northern province encompassed within the former province of the Transvaal by AD 500. Okay, to me, much ado about nothing. But still, I guess to really get to the bottom of where the Bantus came from, we'd have to kind of revert back to the comprehensive E1B1A video, because we know what happened. We know what happened before we started the disbursement and all that. The Roman destruction of Jerusalem and all that. But see, they know that. In order to answer the question, where were the so-called Bantus before this expansion, they would have to take us back to Israel. I mean, no ifs, ands, and buts about it. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. So anyway, we're going to end that there, and we're going to go into the actual, expansion itself, kind of look at that a little bit, some of the languages and things like that, and that'll set up the very last segment, which actually compares the Bantu languages and the Hebrew languages, which are pretty much identical, and then we'll move on from there. Yeah, you just have to be real careful with how they, play with words. Migration is it means to move from, one region or habitat to another. So how is it that you have all these little so-called, African movements by the Bantus, but you don't know where they came from, or you don't know where they migrated from? Well, I'm calling BS. All right, the Bantu expansion. It says the Bantu expansion is the name for a postulated millennia-long series of migrations of speakers of the original Proto-Bantu language group. The primary evidence for this expansion has been linguistic, namely that the languages spoken in sub-equatorial Africa are remarkably similar to each other. Attempts to trace the exact root of the expansion, to correlate it with archaeological evidence and genetic evidence have not been conclusive. Yeah, I bet. Thus, many aspects of the expansion remain in doubt or are highly contested. The Bantus traveled in two waves. The first across the Congo forest region. The linguistic core of the Bantu family of languages, a branch of the Niger-Congo language family, was located in the adjoining region of Cameroon and Nigeria. Those are two of the main hubs for the slave trade, if many of you don't know. From this core, expansion began about 3,000 years ago, with one stream going into East Africa and other streams going south along the African coast of Gabon, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Angola, or inland along the many south to north flowing rivers of the Congo River system. The expansion eventually reached South Africa, probably as early as AD. Okay. It didn't say, when in AD, but okay, we'll roll with that. On to the next segment. Next slide. Yeah, I think, but they pretty much painted a nice picture. I mean, when you start hearing buzzwords like, remain in doubt or inconclusive and highly contested, i.e., they know exactly where the Bantus came from. They know that the Bantus are the lost Hebrew Israelites. They know that we came from Northeast Africa. They know all of that, but they're not going to release it. And that's all that means. They're full of mess. But anyway, we're gonna move right along. We're gonna talk about a little bit about the Niger Congo languages of the Bantus. Let's read it. It says the Niger Congo family comprises a huge group of languages spread throughout sub-Saharan Africa. See, there you go. That's sub-Saharan. They want to keep us all sub-Saharan. You don't hear nothing about Northeast Africa or, as a matter of fact, I'm going to show you a copy of the L3E, which is the female version of the E1B1A from my mom. And they're the only ones that actually was honest and told you where the L3E originated, which is Northeast Africa. I'll bring that forth a little later. All right, it says the Benue Congo branch includes the Bantu languages, which are found throughout central, southern, and eastern Africa. You notice how they just stay far away from northeast. They just stay far away from that area, man. They don't even say north. It's funny. It's a characteristic feature of most Niger Congo languages, including the Bantu languages, is their use of tone. They generally lack inflection. But grammatical gender is characteristic, with some languages having 24 genders. The root of the verb tends to remain unchanged, with either particles of auxiliary verbs expressing tenses and moods. For example, in a number of languages, the infinitival is the auxiliary designating the future. Okay, cool deal. Moving right along. Okay, as with just about a scholar in any field, whether it's archaeological or anthropological or geological, whatever, they normally have a hypothesis or theories. And at some point, you have to test your hypothesis. In this case, there's some theories on the Bantu expansion. So we're gonna read that and end this segment out. And I believe we're gonna go into the DNA aspect of the presentation. And then I'll finish it out with the linguistic, the Hebrew and the Bantu language comparison, and that'll pretty much be that. So let's say theories on expansion. It says initially, archaeologists believed that they could find archaeological similarities in the ancient cultures of the region that the Bantu speakers were held to have traversed, while linguists classifying the languages and creating a genealogical table of relationships believed they could reconstruct material culture elements. They believed that the expansion was caused by the development of agriculture, the making of ceramics, and the use of iron, which permitted new ecological zones to be exploited. In 1966, Roland Oliver published an article presenting these correlations as a reasonable hypothesis. The hypothesized Bantu expansion pushed out or assimilated the hunter-forager Proto-Coetian who formerly inhabited southern Africa. In eastern and southern Africa, Bantu speakers may have adopted livestock husbandry from other unrelated Cushitic or Nilotic speaking peoples they encountered. Herding practices reached the far south several centuries before Bantu speaking migrants did. Archaeological, linguistic, genetic, and environmental evidence all support the conclusion that the Bantu expansion was a significant human migration. Interesting. So if it was so significant, why then can't you hypothesize where the Bantu people originated from before the Bantu expansion began? But you didn't hear that from me, though. On to the next segment. All right, we're headed into the next segment, which is the DNA segment. The really, really fun part for a lot of you, right? But you know what's ironic about the DNA part between the Bantus and the Lemba? The Lemba are actually known as Bantu speakers. They're actually known to be from that whole Bantu expansion. So it's really pretty ironic that they got caught up in all this haplogroup J stuff. I'm going to deal with them kind of in the second part of this segment, but I just kind of wanted to speak on that real quick. The African Limber are actually known as Bantus or Bantu speakers. So, but more on that on the second part. I kind of revisit the whole DNA situation with them. But right now, let's kind of deal with this. This is from an anthropology blog, pretty scholarly. Let's see what it has. As a matter of fact, let's just scroll down. You guys can stop it and pause if you want to read all that stuff. But pretty much what I wanted to get was, let's scroll down to where it says, in this study, we analyze unique event polymorphism and short tandem repeat variation in non-recombining Y chromosome haplogroups contained within the E1B1A haplogroup, of course, of the Bantus, which is exclusive to individuals of recent African ancestry, in a large geographically widely distributed tongue-tied set of sub-Saharan Africans. And they have the groups equal 43, yada, yada, yada. And then it says all of whom except one Nilo-Saharan speaking group spoke a Niger-Congo language and most a Bantu tongue. There you go. Okay, I kind of wanted to set the tone that this DNA segment of the Bantus or the Negroes is definitely without question E1B1A. And on that note, we're going to move on to the next slide in this segment. Okay, Ham became the progenitor of all the dark races, which would be the Ethiopians or the Cushites, the Egyptians, the original ones, not the ones that got their mixed blood today, it's in power, the Libyans, and the Africans, which their Y-DNA haplotype is E1B1B1, but it said not the Negroes. And up to this point, we've established firmly and without question that the Negroes were the Bantus, and the Bantus are E1B1A, or of the E1B1A Y-DNA haplotype. So I remember I designed this back when I did my comprehensive E1B1A video. Let's read it. It says this haplogroup is found predominantly among Bantu descendants, to include but not limited to the African Limba, many West African tribes, though in some southern ones too, because as a matter of fact the Limba are in the south, the Igbos, the Yorubas, so-called African Americans, West Indians or Jamaicans, Brazilians, Haitians, there's a percentage of there's a Negro Hebrew percentage in just about all nations. Okay, so we would be going forever, on where we're scattered into, because the Most High said He was going to scatter us throughout the four corners of the world. And trust me, there is a percentage in every nation you go to of Negro Hebrew Israelites, and obviously who don't know who they are, right? And then, like I said, you go into the Latino nations. There's a percentage of us in each Latino nation. I mean, come on, because during the transatlantic slave trade, those slave ships were being dropped off in Cuba and Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic and Colombia and even Mexico, Costa Rica. I mean, you name it. The whole Central America, South America, obviously North America, which is where we were dropped off. And what's crazy is that, we're all related, but they have us thinking that we're all separate. The only difference between all of our nations of Negro Hebrew Israelites, is that we all speak the language of our colonizers. We speak English because that's the language of our colonizer. Puerto Ricans speak Spanish because that's the language of their colonizer, and so on and so forth. Right? But we're scattered all over. The E1B1A is in just about every nation. Don't get it twisted. Okay. I thought it would have been real cool to add some visuals of what, the E1B1A looks like in other nations. These are the Latino nations. This is my man Felix Trinidad from Puerto Rico. And let me just say this, because I've seen a little bit of ignorance out there talking about, just because I'm identifying, who the Hebrew Israelites are, somehow that's a racist ideology. Listen, don't get me twisted with nothing or nobody. There's nothing about me or my teachings or anything racist. Okay, because everyone that knows me knows that I'm the exact opposite of that. I don't preach and teach hate. I preach and teach the truth, and the truth is, Romans 9 and 27 said, just as you guys are seeing with these pictures, these are Dominican brothers right there, Tego Calderon from Puerto Rico, that the Israelites, because we were scattered all over the four corners of the earth and pretty much every nation, that in numbers we're like the sand of the sea. That's how many Israelites there are in the world. I mean, just look at our people, man. We're all over. Israelites are everywhere. But the second part to Romans 9 and 27 says that only a remnant is going to be saved. That's a very small amount. That's a little disheartening. Those right there, those are black Mexicans. Those are Hebrew Mexicans for all intents and purposes. That's what our people looks like in Mexico. Okay, without even knowing their DNA or whatever the case may be, just by virtue of what I know our people should look like in terms of having that Negro E1B1A DNA marker. This is what our people looks like in these Latino countries. So these sisters right here, they're from Colombia. They look like straight Negroes. Okay, I believe these sisters right here, I believe they're from Colombia as well. And these sisters right here, they're from Costa Rica. I mean, look at them. They look like Bantus. I mean, they all look like Negroes. I mean, you wouldn't even know they were in a Latino country if I didn't tell you. They just look like regular Negro black people, right? But y'all know how I do. And I'm a truth revealer. I'm a truth teller. Okay, we have everything that we need now. And the only people that's our seeds genetically are the ones who carry the DNA marker or the L3E marker, unless they're a sojourner. If they're a sojourner, that's fine. See, this is a black Indian. The only Indians that's in Israel are the ones that possess the E1B1A marker, unless they're a sojourner. Okay, but I don't think they want to be that. And this picture right here is indicative of that. I mean, it's a known fact. Native Americans owned slaves, straight up. So I think that tells me all I need to know about them. Unless they, sojourners, or they possess that E1B1A, they're not Israel. And we need to stop teaching and preaching our people that they are. All right, back to the DNA segment. E1B1A, the Bantu, the Negroes. Now here is a nice sample of some of the West African tribes that we are mixed into. And as you can see, by virtue of the high numbers, we got the Bamileke, the Iwe, the Ja, the Yoruba, which is where I descended from, the Tutsi, the Fante, the Mandinka, Ovambo, Sinhalese, Ganda, the Bijahos, the Balanta, the Fulas, the Hereros, the Nalus. There's a lot. I mean, there's a whole lot of them that's not here, but this is just to give you a good indication of where we're all, scattered into. And the thing is, I want you all to understand, especially you ones that are unlearned to DNA and whatnot. There are E1B1As, or our people, mixed in with Hamites, or E1B1B1s. For example, I don't know if many of you have heard of the Biafra tragedy with our Igbo brothers over there. But basically, the Biafrans are Shemitic, and they were battling the Hamitic Igbos. So not all Igbos are Hebrews. Many of those Igbos are actually Hamitic, okay? And unless you kind of had the gift that I had that could tell them apart physically, the only way you would know that is by what their DNA is. I mean, because they're all mixed in. But that's what that whole Biafra tragedy was really about, quiet as it's kept. Shemitic Africans versus Hamitic Africans. All right. So, just to kind of give you a idea on that, and let's read it. Let's go down. It says EV38, which is another smaller nomenclature for E1B1A, says it reaches frequency of over 80% in many parts of West Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, as well as Southern Africa. But since this haplogroup's frequency and diversity are highest in the West Africa region. Of course, we all know or should know that. Within Africa, EV38, which is another smaller nomenclature for E1B1A, displays a west to east as well as south to north clinial distribution. In other words, the frequency of this haplogroup decreases as one moves from Western and Southern Africa toward Eastern and Northern parts of the continent. And that makes all the sense in the world. because East Africa, of course, that's where most of your Hamites originated, where they dwell, and of course, northern as well, which is Egypt. And we know from earlier when I presented that slide that we ain't in Egypt. We definitely ain't in Egypt. All right. So just to let you brothers know, man, y'all really need to get a hold of it and get these teachings, man, I'm giving y'all, man, because y'all preaching and teaching that there ain't no Hebrews in Africa and all that. Brothers, I'm telling you, y'all need to get y'all intellect and step y'all game up. I came to teach the teachers, and I don't mean that in no disrespectful way, but it's time to step it up, man. Y'all been teaching our people a bunch, y'all been teaching some good stuff. Y'all been teaching a bunch of mess, man. Seriously, we all over, okay, and we all over Africa, okay, and I mean there's no way around that, and I'm showing and proving that. E1B1A and all of its subgroups, that's us all day. If you claim to be a child of Israel, you have to reckon or establish your genealogy, your bloodline to Jacob. Bottom line. Okay, now here's a screenshot of my DNA results. All right, and you see it's you see the red dots right there. We go right to it. E1B1A 7A. Obviously it's a subgroup of E1B1A. All right. And we scroll on over it, and it says example populations, Bantu speakers, dead giveaway, the Negroes, or the lost Hebrew Israelites, that they won't say that that's what they are. Okay, I come from that. And so-called African Americans. Boom. It's not exclusive to me. All of majority of you too. And I'm not saying all so-called African Americans, because let me I got to say this real quick. I would never say or imply that all Negroes or all African Americans, quote unquote, are Hebrew Israelites, because there were some slave rapes going on. What does that mean? What that means is that if your forefather was a white slave master, then that means you carry his Y DNA. So no, you're not a Hebrew Israelite genetically or by blood. You carry that European's Y DNA, even if your mother is an Israelite. Okay, you are what your father is. Remember? Going way back to Genesis, Adam, chapter 5, the Most High set that out like that. You are what your father is. All that, establishing maternal haplotypes or whatever to call yourself Jewish and all that didn't come from the Most High. Okay, he didn't set that. All right, so I had to say that real quick. You are what your father is. I don't care how many of you like that, don't like it, whatever. Bottom line. So not every single so-called African American is a Hebrew Israelite. That's why it's imperative you have to find out what your haplotype is. I mean, you claiming to be an Israelite, but you may not be. I mean, you might be just a sojourner. I mean, I don't know. You got to find that out for yourself, though. But anyway, scroll down here and it says the E1B1A is a branch of haplogroup E. Predominates Africa and south of the Sahara, where it spread about, there you go, 4,000 years ago. So that's that Bantu speech, in conjunction with the expansion of Bantu-speaking people out of Western Africa. But it doesn't say, where it originated. Now you just won't find that. And if someone does find out where someone's, is honest and say where the Bantus originated, please let me know. Because I've researched high and low, and I can't find, anyone's being honest and saying, where the Bantus originated, just that they expanded. And supposedly the migration was important, but yet they can't tell us where they came from. Right? They can tell us. They just don't want to tell us. It's a big difference there, right? All right, on to the next segment. And please, anyone having an idea of putting some bogus stuff on any of my platforms or whatever about the Bantus, just save your time and breath. I know that they're Hebrew Israelites and they're from Israel. I'm just looking for a website that's going to, be honest and say that. But with that said, here's a copy of my mom's maternal haplogroup. She's in the L3E. And this is the only mitochondrial haplogroup that I can, vouch for. This is like the female version of the E1B1A, and clearly you can just, read it for yourself. The fact that the example populations are, the Bantu speakers, and so-called African Americans did give away there. Now, but the only thing is the origin. For some reason, they're more forthcoming with the origin of the L3E. And it says here, it's plain as day, haplogroup L3E originated about 45,000 years ago in central northeastern Africa, then spread south with the migration of Bantu-speaking people over the past 4,000 years. Now, why don't they say that for the male side? Just that little piece right there. Why don't they say that? I guess they just don't want to chance it, huh? Yeah, they know where the Bantus came from. They know where they were before the Bantu expansion. I'm not going to even get into all that again. But I think this is gonna close it out for the first part of the DNA side of this segment. Now I'm going to get into the whole DNA thing with the Lemba, and how it corresponds with the Bantus and whatnot. Because there's a couple things going on there. I'm going to address that, and then we'll get into the whole linguistic thing to end out the presentation. All right, hang in there. We're almost to the end. All right, here we go. Here's the second part of the DNA segment. Now, let me set this up. What we're looking at here is a copy of the various haplogroups of the African Lemba. Now, let me let you all know what I know now, what I've learned, vice what I thought I knew back when I first did the E1B1A comprehensive video. Okay, now when I did that comprehensive E1B1A video, at first I couldn't find their haplotypes for some reason. I couldn't find it. All right, but then eventually I did. I found this. I found their haplotypes, and actually this is included in that video. All right, now what's true is, like I said previously, the Lemba are actually known as Bantus or Bantu speakers. Okay, they're Negroes. Without a shadow of a doubt, they are Negroes. That I do know. And what happened is, or let me put it like this. The African Lemba, their nation or their tribe is no different than any other Negro nation. Of course, they're going to have a couple other different haplotypes here and there. But as you can see by this slide, nothing significant. I'll get into that in a minute. But it doesn't change the fact that they are E1B1A. They are Negroes. But apparently what's going on is that if you bump down to the second gold dot, where you see that haplogroup, you see the J. Okay, now scroll to the right. Okay, it says population Lemba. It says they tested 30 African Lemba, but only 6 tested positive for this haplogroup J. Why is that significant? Because that is not a significant number of those who tested for this haplogroup J. Yet, how and why are they hinging this whole cohort modal thing on just 6 people, supposedly out of 30? Okay, anyway, I'll get back to that. So let's go. Let's scan up. Y'all see that first gold dot? It says EM2. Okay, what that is, EM2 is the smaller nomenclature for E1B1A. Okay, those are our Hebrew brothers and sisters from the Lemba that we're looking at. Now, let's compare that. Supposedly of 16 individuals they tested, half of them, 50%, were Hebrew Israelites. Okay, they were E1B1A, seed of Jacob, bottom line. Okay, so that is more significant than 6 supposedly testing for positive for haplogroup J out of 30. And then you look at all the other numbers there. Like I said, they're very insignificant. Scroll down a little bit, another J, another part of J. They 2 out of 4, 8 out of 23. Supposedly whatever. And I still have not seen any African Lemba that looks mixed, because haplogroup J is a pronounced European type haplogroup. So I see a bunch of Negroes, but that's a whole nother thing. Okay. What I know now, or what I thought then when I did the first presentation, is that I always said that, well, if they are the Levi tribe and they're, they have the Kohen modal, it has to be up under E1B1A, because it wouldn't be under haplogroup J, because haplogroup J has nothing to do with the ancient Israelite nation, nothing at all. The ancient Israelite nation is haplogroup E. Period, point blank, bottom line. Stop the madness. Okay, but what it is they're using the African limba, getting in their heads, getting in their, having them with this whole Judaism stuff, and they're basically using them unwillingly and unknowingly, because they have a hidden agenda, because they think that that gives them credibility, right? I don't know what they think they found or what they think they know or whatever the case may be, but what I know is that the majority of the African limba are Negroes, are Bantus. They're E1B1A. Okay, they're our people, but they're being lied to. They're being misused. They're being led astray, and they got them practicing this whole Judaism thing. And I mean, it's kind of sad, that they got them like that. But they're in power. They got access to them like that, right? So that's what I know now, or whatever the case may be. So, on the next segment, I'm going to discuss I'm going to bring up the whole Kohen modal thing. And let me just say this, just so I'm clear, okay? I don't believe there to be any Kohen modal, especially not if it's attached to anything that's not E1B1A or whatever the case may be. E1B1B, bump. Haplogroup J, bump. Stop it, knock it off, kill the noise, stop the madness. Okay? You Ashkenazi and Khazarian Jews are not Levites. You do not have any type of Cohen modal haplotype. You're not from the Middle East, quote unquote. You're not from the seed of Isaac and Jacob. Knock it off. Stop it. Okay? So that's where it is now. They are our people. Majority of them are. Yeah, they have a few other people in there with different haplogroups. I mean, we all do, right? None of us are all E1B1. I just said that earlier. Because there was some slave rape, there was a little mixing going on. So that's understandable in all nations. But I tell you this, for the most part, the African limba are our people, but they're being misled. They're being used. They're being lied to. And basically, they're basically using them as pawns. I hate to say it, but that's what's going on now. And no, I don't believe they possess no Kohen modal. Now, rather they're Levi or not, I don't know. But if they were, definitely wouldn't be up under no haplogroup J, or definitely no E1B1B, no bloodline of Ham. But what I want to touch on is just something that's not even being looked at or talked about, is that how I don't see how these Khazarian or Ashkenazi Jews, whatever they call themselves, how they can use the limba to help validate them when, I mean, does everyone else see what the limba looks like? If the limba from the tribe of Levi, or so-called Kohen modal like they're claiming, and they're dark-skinned Negroes, how in the hell are they getting everyone to believe that their pale white skins came from the same forefather as the limba did? And no one is talking about that. It's like, if anything, it's like, wait a minute, that should raise eyebrows. Like, there is no way. Listen, without any DNA, we're talking just the eye test. You're not going to tell me that two Snow White looking white people came from the same bloodline of very dark skinned Negroes, because they're from the same seed and same nation. Man, ain't no way, man. Stop it. And nobody's talking about that for some reason. But I'm looking at it from that perspective. Like, if anything, I think the limba discounts them. So, but no one's thinking about that. It's like, there's no way those white people came from the same father and 11 other brothers. There's no way, man. I just wanted to kind of say that real quick. No one's really talking about that aspect of it. But but just so I'm clear, I'm talking strictly from a genetic standpoint, being from the same seed and nation and bloodline, meaning, all of them being from the E1B1A. Now, because remember, without going on a tangent, the E1B1B did default from Esau, right, to E1B1B1. But they're not, but they're not claiming that. They're claiming that they're Jewish, right? So, they're not from the same nation as the real E1B1A. So I'm talking strictly from a genetic standpoint, right? But again, they got the world so blinded and fooled. Nobody really isn't even looking that deep into it, man. I mean, it's like, just get ready for a long one, man. It's gonna go on and on. And I just thought about this, man. But another aspect is, basically they got the wrong the wrong ones in the African limba, thinking that they're Hebrew Israelites. That's kind of crazy if you really think about it. Because remember, they're not saying that E1B1A is Jewish. They're focusing on haplogroup J and even E1B1B1. So if they took those limbas that possesses the E1B1B1 by chance and haplogroup J, if they're claiming that they're the Israelites, they got the wrong ones, and again, they're promoting the wrong Israelites to the world. But if my other limba brothers and sisters is listening to this, listen, E1B1A or EM2, that is the real Hebrew Israelite haplogroup, not haplogroup J or E1B1B. That's just kind of crazy, man. I guess, the lies just, my grandmother always said, if you lie, you got to tell so many other lies to cover up the first one. So it's like, why lie, right? But, they're perpetuating this great lie, unfortunately, using the limba as pawns. Because I'm here to tell you, they got the wrong ones. Again, they got it wrong. And still perpetuating that lie, but the only thing we can do is just kind of keep fighting and keep trying to stomp it out. But anyway, let me go ahead and this is the very last segment of the second part to the DNA part. And, then we'll get into the linguistic thing and end it out. But, that's just kind of crazy, man. They got the wrong limbas thinking that they're Israelites. All right. Y chromosomes traveling south, the Cohen modal haplotype, and the origins of the limba, the black Jews of southern Africa. All right. In the summary, it says the limba are a traditionally endogenous group speaking a variety of Bantu languages. They're Bantus, they're Negroes, who live in a number of locations in southern Africa. They claim descent from Jews who came to Africa from Senna. Senna is variously identified by them as Sana in Yemen, Judea, Egypt, or Ethiopia. Well, first of all, that's like a misnomer. Egypt and Ethiopia should have nothing to do with Judea. So I don't know how they got that combination like that. But anyway, a previous study using Y chromosome markers suggested both a Bantu and a Semitic contribution to the limba gene pool. Now, let me speak to that. That Bantu contribution to the limba gene pool, that's the E1B1A. That's the actual real haplotype of the Hebrew Israelites. That's the Bantu contribution to the limba. Those are our brothers and sisters. This Semitic contribution, that's that haplogroup J madness that they're pushing. That's not Semitic. Haplogroup J is not Semitic. So I'm going to kill that. I'm definitely going to kill it in the next video. I'm going to kill that right now. Haplogroup J is not Semitic. Haplogroup E1B1B1 is not Semitic. Haplogroup E1B1B1 is actually a Hamitic haplogroup. All right, so I'm going to kill that. Now, let's continue. It says a suggestion that is not inconsistent with limba oral tradition. To provide a more detailed picture of the limba paternal genetic heritage, we analyzed 399 Y chromosomes to 6 microsatellites and 6 bialic markers and 6 populations: Limba, Bantu, Yemeni, Hadramat, Yemeni, Sina, Sephardic Jews, that's a joke, and Ashkenazic Jews. The high resolution afforded by markers shows that Limba Y chromosomes are clearly divided into Semitic and Bantu clades. See, oh God, man, Semitic, get out of here with that. Semitic and Bantu. Now, those are Bantus, those are Negroes, those are our people, man. They need to stop playing with them like that. Interestingly, one of the Limba clan carries at a very high frequency a particular Y chromosome termed to be this Cohen modal haplotype, which is known to be characteristic of the paternity inherited Jewish priesthood and is thought more generally to be a potential signature haplotype of Judaic origin. The Bantu Y chromosome samples are predominantly 80% and include a modal haplotype at high frequency. If anything, I'd be more concerned about that Bantu modal haplotype, if anything, not no Cohen modal, because they need to kill that madness, man. Assuming a rapid expansion of the Eastern Bantu, we use variation in microsatellite alleles and YAP and a bunch of DNA talk. Bantu Y chromosomes to calculate a rough date. Anyway, as far as I'm concerned, much ado about nothing. They're basically telling the truth. I mean, the African Limba are Bantus, they're Negroes. There's definitely a percentage of our people in the African Limba. That's without a shadow of a doubt. But apparently, again, what's going on is that they're picking out a few to say that they're some Cohen mode or whatever, haplogroup J and whatever, to kind of help bolster, their claims. But we know it's not true at all. So that's that. That ends the DNA segment. I'm gonna present this linguistic evidence between the Bantu languages and Hebrew, how it's almost identical, and we're gonna end it out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. I'm sorry for the length, but you know how I do. I gotta be thorough, and I'm not gonna ever cheat you guys. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and I did my thing. So let's get on to the next segment.